I often find myself talking about trans issues because I think it's one of the forefronts of the progressive fight in our country and in many Western nations. And there's a big controversy over prisons and bathrooms, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't. But we have this story that I think should be talked about. Transgender person accused of rape is remanded into female prison and sexually assaults inmates within days. The reason I think this story is important is because trans people have been advocating for, not all, but there have been groups advocating for special prisons for trans individuals. There have been people advocating for trans individuals going into the prison they identify as, meaning like a trans woman would go to a female prison. And there are people and there's trans people who argue the opposite, that they should go to the prison where they're the safest. And it's kind of a lot of trans issues are one directional in the sense that there was a female to male athlete. This is someone born female, transitioning to be male, and they were told he must compete with biological females, and this person wins. And many people are saying it's not fair, they should be competing against males, and the trans man wants to compete against males but can't because of these rules saying it's about biological sex. However, testosterone gives an advantage. Then there's an issue the other way of that, a man who transitions to being female is going to be at a disadvantage against other males, so then they have this person compete against females. It flows in one direction. So many people say you can't have a trans woman in a male prison because there's a lot of assault and abuse that happens in male prisons, and putting a trans woman in there makes them a prime target. But then we do end up seeing stories like this from the Telegraph. A transgender person has been apparently, according to the story, sexually assaulted an inmate within days. So let's take a look at the story and go through the issue. The prison service has apologized after a transgender inmate charged with raping a woman sexually assaulted 4 fellow inmates just days after being remanded into an all-female jail. Convicted pedophile Karen White, who was born Stephen Wood, was undergoing gender reassignment but had not undergone full surgery when she was accused of repeatedly raping a woman in 2016. The 52-year-old who had been previously jailed in 2001 for a sex attack on a child told the authorities she identified as a woman and was remanded into HMP Newhall near Wakefield, West Yorkshire. I want to point something out too. This story is going to be sensational just because the person is transgender. I assure you there are many stories about rape that have happened recently that are not being covered in the news, and I assure you there are many stories of inmates who are accused of rape, who have committed rape, and are not being covered in the news. But a couple things. For one, it's a story of a transgender person, which makes it a bigger issue, but also that it is a person born biologically male being put into a female prison. And so this naturally makes the story stand out, and I just think that's an important point to bring up. So within days of arriving to the women's only prison in September last year, White made a sexual advance to another inmate while in an aroused state. A fortnight later, White approached another female inmate and struck up a conversation in which she made comments about oral sex. She then took hold of the woman's hand and forced it onto her left breast in order to feel her padded bra. Just days later, she was accused of pushing her hips and privates. I'm trying to keep it PG for the advertisers, guys, but I think it's too late. Against another prisoner, and in November last year, she allegedly kissed a female inmate on the neck. She was transferred into HMP Armley, an all-male prison in Leeds, when the inmates came forward to report the attacks. Under the current rules, a prisoner must be placed into a jail in accordance with their legally recognized gender. If an inmate identifies as their non-legally recognized gender, a local transgender case board will meet to assess, but must take account of the previous offending history. However, that did not take place in this case. A prison service spokesperson said, "We apologize sincerely for the mistakes which were made in this case. While we work to manage all prisoners, including those who are transgender, sensitively and in line with the law, we are clear that the safety of all prisoners must be our absolute priority." Appearing at Leeds Crown Court last month, White pleaded guilty to 2 counts of rape in relation to the 2016 attack and also admitted indecently assaulting 2 Newhall prisoners. So listen, there is a special circumstance here that I think should be taken into account when we're dealing with prisons. First, maybe it makes sense to have another prison for non-binary, for trans people, and it doesn't have to be as large because the population of people who are trans is much smaller than the general population, so it probably wouldn't be that expensive to create another wing for, non-binary individuals. I don't know what the solution is. I'm trying not to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to find real solutions. But one thing that needs to be pointed out is that I think the bigger issue here is not necessarily the trans issue, that this person is transgender, but that they took someone who was convicted, who was charged with rape, and put them in a situation where it could happen again. That's the biggest issue. Because I'm sure there are many trans women who can be placed in a female prison and nothing would happen. There wouldn't be assaults. It would probably be fine. But this is an instance where a rapist was placed in, with a biological male rapist who transitioned to female, was placed into a female prison and then committed sexual assault. So when you're taking an offender and putting them in a situation where they can offend again, that seems to be the issue. In a regular prison, I shouldn't say regular, but in like your traditional, maximum security, they put people in solitary confinement if they're considered too dangerous, or they go into special, there's special circumstances for this that I think could have, look, if they were more conscious of the fact of putting a rapist in, an open environment, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. And so I think there's some law enforcement responsibility needs to happen here, not just within the prison, but also within the fact that we need to figure out how to accommodate transgender people. Because maybe just this one-size-fits-all solution doesn't work. Just, if they're trans women, put them in a female prison. Maybe that doesn't work. Maybe we need smaller, special circumstances. I don't know. You guys comment. Let me know what you think. She denied 2 of the prison. Okay, so here we appearing at Leeds Crown. She pled guilty. She denied 2 of the prison assaults, and the cases were ordered to lay on file. Details of the offenses can only be revealed for the first time today, after White appeared in court to admit an historic rape dating back to 2003. With her auburn hair tied up in a ponytail and wearing a gray jumper, White appeared in the dock supported by a walking stick. Adjourning sentencing until October 11th, Judge Christopher Batty said he wanted to assess reports on the danger that White posed. White had been living under the name David Thompson before she began identifying as a woman and began transitioning. She had been living as a woman when she carried out the 2016 rape, the court heard. And that's the important point that I want to bring up. When the rape happened, according to the court, this person was already transitioning to female. And that means that based on the circumstances, you have an individual who, as a trans woman, committed a rape, and then the law enforcement put this person into another female prison where they could be surrounded by more potential victims. You know the sexual proclivities of this individual and what they did as a crime, and they should have been put into some kind of special housing. If that happened, this wouldn't be a trans issue. However, if this was a male rapist, they would never be put in a female prison from the get-go. Thus, we have a potential conundrum. I think what we can see here is that there is an opportunity to bring up an issue in which there can be a positive solution for everybody. And I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying, that maybe considering it's a much smaller population of individuals who are non-binary, you can create a smaller prison section, maybe in a women's prison or a men's prison that's isolated and only for, transgender individuals. Admittedly, there is a potential problem with segregating people, and solitary confinement can be torture. It can. So I really don't know how we solve these problems. But what I want to bring up is something I've brought up in many videos, is that the more we try to protect more groups, the more our protections actually break down. The reason we separate female prisoners from male prisoners is partly, I'd say mostly, for this reason, that there are males who would probably victimize many females, and we don't want to put them in this kind of environment. Thus, this person is biologically male, transitioning to female, but is a rapist and was placed into a situation with a bunch of biological females. Thus, you ended up with a sexual assault. More than one, apparently. I believe they're denying at least 2 of them. But I feel this is going to be an obvious situation. Take someone who is a sexual predator and put them around people who are very similar to those that were already victimized, and you will find more victims. After initially being charged with the prison sex acts, White had told the court she could not be guilty because she was not attracted to women and also suffered from erectile dysfunction. But at a previous hearing, prosecutor Charlotte Dangerfield told Leeds Magistrates Court that she had carried out the first offense within days of arriving at the prison. The prosecutor said White had struck up a relationship with a fellow inmate which had quickly become inappropriate. She explained, the defendant would stand very close to her, touch her arm, and wink at her. Her penis was erect, sticking out the top of her trousers. And I do gotta say, things are getting really confusing. Again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but when you have a sentence that says her penis was erect, sticking out of the top of her trousers, it does, look, admittedly, it's difficult. And if you're watching this and you are a trans rights activist, please empathize with the fact that we have syntax in this country, and it is difficult to change your language to recognize things like this. People aren't used to it. Makes it hard to read. It does. On September 26 last year, White approached another inmate. Miss Dangerfield said she made inappropriate comments about oral sex, which made the complainant feel sick. She took hold of the complainant's hand and put it on the defendant's left breast. She could feel her padded bra. So I don't want to go through to the crazy details of the story. I'll just read the final part because we're going a little long. Sarah Didham, a feminist campaigner, said, "This is exactly what feminists have been warning about in the redefinition of sex and gender identity, is the possibility that people such as Karen White, who've got a clear sexual motive for wanting to be put in women's intimate spaces, are going to take advantage of it. It's appalling that something like this has been allowed to happen." Well, I agree. I don't know what the solution is for the fifth time, because we can't just tell trans people you're out of luck. No, we have to accommodate people who have, actual issues that need to be dealt with. The gender dysphoria, it's a real thing. These people exist. They have problems. They should be accommodated. Our society should do its best in accordance with our resources, how we can solve problems for these people. I don't think the solution to the problem of taking a biological male transitioning to female who is a rapist and putting them in with more biological females, that's not a solution to this problem, and it could have been avoided. And there you go. Now we have the issue of trans exclusionary radical feminists who are saying these are biological males entering female spaces, and the whole problem gets extremely complicated. But anyway, comment below, I guess. Let me know what you think. I'm going to get out of here. I've got to move quick on these videos, but stay tuned. More coming tomorrow at 4 p.m.